Good evening. The hour of 5:30 having arrived, a call to order this special meeting of the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel, which is a change. You guys don't care. You can watch us live. But the 13-2 channel's not working right. You can hardly hear it. So we're recommending anybody that's listening in to switch over to the city's YouTube channel. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the proposed operating budget will find it on the city website. Excuse me. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks will be made through the chair, and I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. We have a quorum present. We'll call us to order. The minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Committee members, please be sure to turn on your microphones when speaking. And if the minute taker is unable to hear, they'll be asking you to speak louder or turn on the microphone. So if you hear a voice from the sky, it's one of the minute takers if we're not making this stuff work the way it should. So we're up to our third night this evening to handle the budget. We should be able to accomplish all our business this evening. And we're starting off with the Community Development Department. So, John, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. John Rogers, I'm the interim Community Development Director. I'm here tonight to go over the Community Development budget and answer any questions that you might have. We're on actually page 146 of the budget book is where our narrative and matrix starts. In there, we do speak to some of the last year and some of the new stuff that the department's done. We have the new land development code that has been adopted by the council and that we're certainly have put into play and working with developers and the local property owners and trying to, hopefully this will help streamline some of our development questions and the process itself. At the same time, we've taken on some additional tasks with the creation of the Congregate Living and Social Services Licensing Board. So that's an ongoing task that our department is moving forward to get some of the congregate cares facilities licensed and inspected, and try and get in and do more of an annual inspection for some of these different properties and organizations. With that, as the committee is probably aware that as I'm the interim director, we have did an interview process, and I know that the city manager has made an offer, which I believe was accepted by Jesse Rounds, who will be moving to the Keene area from Colorado. And we hope to see him here by the end of June, early July. So we've been a department that's been in transition for several years, and this transition kind of continues. Some of it was from the original, as many of you might recall, the combining of the multiple departments into one. This task still is kind of an ongoing, and then with a new director, we hope that that'll be kind of the finishing part of that combining of all the departments. With that, we in our budget itself, our numbers on our revenue numbers that are on 149, you'll see there that they're staying pretty much the same. We have our estimating for this year to be a little bit higher of a number for the excuse me, for the permit revenue. It's been a busy year. In the last 2 years during COVID, a lot of people have turned to doing work on their houses, or even some of the developments that have the commercial type developments that have occurred over the last 2 years. We anticipate that to still kind of remain about the same. So you'll see the revenue number for the permits themselves is still up over to the 315,000 is what we're projecting. it's a little bit of a shot in the dark sometimes, because you don't know some with this. Sometimes right now, even the problems that the developers are having with inventory and getting material to do some of this can be a holdup for some of these projects. The rest of the numbers, we're really kind of keeping them pretty well flat for projections as to what we're anticipating. On page 148, you'll see that's the flow chart for our personnel, and that's really stays the same. We did have 2 administrative assistants. We're down to 1, and we're moving forward projecting that's the way the department will stay, is with the 1 administrative assistant. On page 150, we do get into the summary by the accounts, and you'll see that these are a little bit of a cost savings. Some of that is in the personnel, obviously going from the previous director that had been at the top step, and with the new director coming in at a lower step, there's some cost savings there. But at the bottom line, our numbers are slightly down in the personnel from what the estimate was for the 22 budget, and the overall numbers again are down slightly from the budget from the 22, and a lot of that's contributed to the personnel changes that we've had, is where we're seeing a lot of those cost savings. And with that, if there's any questions, I'm more than willing to try and answer them for you.
Questions from members of the committee? All right, and go ahead.
I just hope you're setting up Mr. Rounds for some fun, busy projects when he gets here, because he comes in right at the beginning of the fiscal. So hopefully he's got some fun ones in here.
We certainly will. We have quite a few projects that we are hoping to get done. The master plan is one of them. Not necessarily, we're not going to rewrite the whole master plan, but it's really updating and reorganizing it to meet the direction the city has gone since the last time the master plan was done. So that's going to be a big one on his to-do list that we're gonna put in his lap right away.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead.
John didn't talk about it, but there's been a lot of work between community development and the fire department over the last couple of months, yes, in coordinating inspections and doing some cross-training, and the fire department is going through a process of looking at the software used in the community development office to see if we can also consolidate under one software for some of this permitting. So really, kudos to John for moving that forward with our new fire chief.
And as the city manager mentioned, we're meeting with the fire department pretty much every week and kind of going over and how we can, we have a software program that we put in place a few years ago called iWorks that has some really good inspection process in there. So we certainly are looking to try and become a little bit more of the one-stop shopping for permits, as opposed to us when somebody comes to us and applies for a permit, and then we have to tell them they have to go talk to the fire department or the public works to get other permits. We're trying to see if we can become that one-stop. So that's a project that's underway and heading in the right direction, I believe.
Well, we have no other counselors in the audience, so I don't have to recognize them, and it looks like everybody that's out there is a participant, so that'll make it move a little faster too.
Yeah.
Well, John, good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Mr. Director, remember what your friends told you this morning.
I believe they said I have like 2 hours. Oh, the boss wanted me to. Start. Good evening. Corp Blomquist, Public Works Director, Emergency Management Director for the city. And again, I want to thank the committee chair and the committee for the opportunity to be talking tonight about the Public Works budget. One of the things we talk about is the services that and activities that the department does touches everybody, both visitors, businesses, and residents every single day. These are the services that really are the bedrock for a community. We provide the access to the transportation system, clean water, disposal of wastewater, solid waste management, etc. Public Works, we represent about 34% of the total budget. It's about $22.4 million within it, so it's a good opportunity to talk a little bit more about what happens there. Our department is involved in all 6 funds, and I'll talk a little bit briefly a little bit later on about each of the fund areas and what I'm expecting to see coming out of that. The department met the goals of City Council and the City Manager for the submission of the budget, so I think as the Chairman indicated before, there's not a lot to talk about. But really what I think tonight is the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the services that are provided, expectations that maybe as we do implement the operating budget each year. We don't always have this opportunity. We're always here in front of you with a specific issue. Usually we're asking for more money. But this is an opportunity to talk to not just me tonight, and I will be getting away from the microphone a little bit, which will make lots of people happy. Be able to talk to the rest of my senior management staff as they talk about, again, how they put their budgets together and maybe some of the things that they're seeing for this upcoming year. The department really hasn't had a substantial increase in its budget since 2010. We've held to the direction of the City Council, which has raised been between 2 to 2.79% of each year. So what does this mean? This means that our services pretty much are the same as they have been for the last decade. Has been any real new programs, etc., that's been proposed. I am concerned looking forward. This committee is aware we've been in front of you several times recently over cost, particularly cost of materials, labor. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see this continue to grow as we move into the next end of the calendar year into next year. So that's an area that we'll be probably talking to you more about as we go along. Diesel and gas have seen substantial price increases, and we're expecting those, looking at information coming out of various agencies. Those are expected to stay high as a result of a lot of the activities that are outside of Keene. But that is something that impacts not just our vehicle and fleet equipment. It also impacts all our other items, our chemicals, all those other things that goes with performing and doing our various operations. One of the other areas that, of course, has been impacting is staffing. We're not proposing any new staffing here, but certainly maintaining staff has been challenging, like it has been for all the city departments. I think you've heard from the different other department heads about just how they are continuing to struggle with getting and keeping people. And I think, again, a lot of this is certainly not within the control of the city. We're struggling with the rising wages in the private sector. The city can't necessarily adjust as quickly as the private sector does. Housing, if you can't get a house, you can't come to the area. So that's impacted our staffing. And what does that mean for us? Well, myself, the airport director, and the Parks Rec facility cemetery director, we're more or less connected at the hip. We are always talking about what the needs are, and we're looking at ways of combining. And this is something I think is important, is that I know you look at budgets individually, but at the end of the day, the city's budget as a whole and all the departments go together to make up that. And I think the group that I just mentioned, we're probably closely tied together through such things as we've been doing our snow operations. We do that citywide. And what does that mean? Well, I have staff from Public Works that goes down, works at the airport. Parks and Rec has staff that supports other activities, etc. We also have supported each other in some of the large mowing operations, etc. And I don't expect that to change. I expect those to probably get more interaction between the departments in making sure that we can provide the services at the pricing that we can be able to do. Like I said, I want to touch base on a couple different areas here as we go along. I was not here for the manager's budget. Within the manager's budget is emergency management, so I'm going to kind of go outside Public Works for a couple minutes and just talk about a couple areas there. As your emergency management director, I know the focus over the last year has been COVID, and that emergency management team has been meeting for almost the last 2 years. I know the city manager has talked about many of the things that that team has been able to do and accomplish for the city and also the community. But I also need to mention we also are seeing our regular emergencies. Last July, we experienced a flooding event, July 17th, 19th, and 29th through the 1st. Right now, the city has submitted $1.1 million worth of damages that we're continuing to work through with FEMA on recovering 90% of those costs. And I guess that's the good news, is that this particular disaster, through the federal budget's adoption, they're going to be reimbursing communities 90%. Why is this important? Well, emergency management is something that continues to grow. And you probably saw within the city manager budget, I recommended a stipend for the assistant emergency management director, also some fundings for looking at the EOC. And when I say the emergency management function continues to grow, it really has over the last 4, 5, 6 years as we go. It used to be emergency management was one of these things you did maybe a couple times a year and then you called it good. It's really not a extra duty anymore. Along with being responsible for making sure the city's local emergency operation plans are up to date, the continuing operation plans are up to date, our hazard mitigation plans. There's also, as the state has developed more regulation for other industries, particularly social service industries, like a lot of our senior centers, all the facilities that support the aging, all now have requirements where they have to have their emergency plans reviewed by the local emergency manager and the local emergency manager's team. So that's a layer of work that hasn't been there, that is coming in. We're also participating in the schools. Every time the schools have a review by Department of Homeland Security, police, fire, emergency management also goes in with them to review the school's emergency plans, meet the principals, and those sort of things there. I'm on my 6th one coming up next week of doing that. So again, that results in, a fairly good amount of workload that is being created for that particular, for those two positions. And I thought it was appropriate that we begin recognizing that for the, particularly the assistant, because it really has become a two-person team when you start dealing with these issues and go on. And the last amount of funding requested was some funding to help look at relocating our EOC from the bottom of City Hall. Right now, our EOC is located down over in the northeast corner of the City Hall here. It's been there for a number of years, and I can't explain why that's not going, but that's okay. We're looking at relocating that up to the 2nd floor to the training room, making a dual-purpose room, emergency management space during when we need to open up the EOC, and then, of course, the regular rest of the time and continue that as that. And that will take some additional funding. Moving on over to Public Works now, the general fund area. General fund area supports our highway, admin, and engineering functions. More detail, of course, will be talked about by Harry McKelvey and Duncan Watson when they come up. Again, this is an area that certainly we're going to be impacted with cost increases. It's also an area where our admin is heavily involved in the communications with the city and the community over the projects and things that we do. They have the responsibility to making sure that we get information out, and we do have a core group. It's quite interesting, a core group of folks that belong to both our Twitter and our Facebook, and who like to be in the know as we tell them about what's happening. Equipment fund is one of the other funds that are part of the overall portfolio of Public Works. The equipment fund takes care of all the city vehicles and equipment that's within our central fleet system. Again, the area that this is going to be heavily impacted upon the cost increases that I talked about earlier is going to be the fleet area. They heavily depend on diesel and gasoline for both certainly operation of vehicles, but also to all the materials and parts that go into a piece of equipment have somewhere in their background those particular byproducts of those chemicals in them. So that's an area that that team works diligently. We're having issues with availability of repair parts, equipment coming in. So that's something that they'll talk more about as they move into the more detailed review. We also support the parking fund. We are the construction contractor. We manage all the physical spaces for the parking services area. You'll be hearing from them. They'll be talking about their operations and more in that. We maintain the parking garages our 4 surface lots along with then the on-street parking, everything from snow plowing to maintenance and repair. I am concerned again over the long term as pricing increases, the availability and ability to do the limited maintenance that we are doing. We're having to look at cutting scope in some areas as the costs continue to go. And parking is an important piece to the city's strategies moving forward. Solid waste, you'll be hearing from Duncan Watson a little bit more. I know solid waste sometimes has a tendency to be one of those quiet on the sides. This is an operation, and Duncan has talked about it over the years, that we are one of the only operations in the state of New Hampshire that operates outside the tax base. We operate completely as an enterprise fund, meaning that our tip fees and our revenues from our recycling fund those operations. Again, this is an area that we are seeing expectation changes over time. People like going there, but also, too, people always don't necessarily like paying for what they no longer want. But those costs are continuing to increase. Again, a lot of our contracts are governed by fuel. I'm concerned that, again, over this next year, we may be seeing some discussions with you about what we'll need to do that. Also, too, future disposal. Duncan can talk more to you about sort of what that picture looks like, because that will drive up the cost as disposal becomes limited in the state of New Hampshire. It's going to have to go somewhere. So that's something to be keeping in mind as we continue to move forward. The last area, just to briefly mention about, is our sewer and water funds. Those take care of our clean water and also our drinking water. The council is aware, of course, we have a new MPDS permit that just started up in February of 21. We do have a number of things that we have to be accomplishing as part of that new permit, along with some additional contaminant compliance issues. We also have a number of studies and et cetera. So you're going to be seeing some additional fund requests in different areas, the operating budget and the CIP, to start funding some of those particular areas. One of the concerns that I have right now, one of the things that drives our water and sewer is consumption or use. The graph on top of my little image there is the production of water, basically, which is, you can think of it as the demand from our consumers. This is from about 2011 to 2021. Back in 2011, we were just about 800 million gallons of water per year. In 2021, last year, we were down to about 640 million gallons per year. We're seeing a drop in consumption and a leveling off. What does that mean is, of course, both water and sewer infrastructure are very expensive to maintain. In much cases, it's there ready to serve. So with the drop in consumption, it means there's a drop in revenues. So one of the things I am going to be recommending to council as part of the budget process is a 5% increase in your water and a 5% in your wastewater rate charges coming up for starting in fiscal year 22. I know you're not always excited to hear that, but this is part of the challenge. And we've been looking at this for a while. I think what's driving this drop in consumption is just the accumulation of the changes over the years in the building industry. Low flow equipment, etc., is now finally showing its benefits for the consumer. Along with certainly industries look to reduce their prices in their production of their products. Many of them have looked for ways that they can reduce the amount of water that's used in the production. We don't have a lot of industry that use a lot of water. We basically have 2. So unless we were to see, again, a new industry come in that was a heavy water user, again, we're expecting this curve to flatten out. So we'll be talking to more with the finance department to talk more about the rate adjustment for this coming year. One area I do definitely want to change is the fire protection. If you remember, the council held the fire protection charges to 2019, and that resulted in about $300,000 shifting over to our residential customers. I would like to, again, shift those costs, which rightfully so should be borne by our commercial and our industrial activities, back to them in the upcoming rate adjustment period. So again, I want to extend my thank you to the committee for the opportunity tonight to be talking about our budget. As I said, it meets the guidelines. So as others have said, well, we don't need to talk about a lot about that aspect. But I also think it's an opportunity for you all to be talking a little bit more about, again, our services. Is there things that your constituents think maybe need to be changed, or if we're doing okay? So with that, I'm going to have Mr. Watson come up. We're going to start, I guess it's on 157. Unfortunately, the city engineer is not here this evening, so I'm going to cover admin and engineering if there's anything particular with them. After that, I mentioned earlier, I will step back and let others chat with you. So, and admin and engineering start, I guess, on page 160. Would you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, hi, Duncan Watson, Assistant Public Works Director, Solid Waste Manager. Up here to present the budget. I think this is number 30 for me. So, wow, yeah, unbelievable. Even more than you.
One more.
One more, yeah. So I'm happy to be here with you tonight. Obviously, Court, mentioned a number of the challenges that we're facing with our budgeting process, but I think that we're doing as good a job as possible of holding the line with some forces that are way beyond our control and reacting to them properly. And obviously, when we have issues that require further attention from the council, we bring those forward to you. But we feel confident with the budget that we're bringing forward today that the services will remain at a steady level and that we'll be able to contain the prices to the greatest extent possible. We'll get into a little bit more when we get into the fleet budget, some of our concerns about the fuel costs. But for now, we're here to talk about the Highway Division's budget. That begins on page 161, and I've got Harry McKelvey here. He's our Transportation and Stormwater Operations Manager. And Harry is going to present this part of the budget for you, and I'm here to help him out if he trips up a little bit.
I appreciate that, Dunk. Good evening. I'm Harry McKelvey. I am the Transportation and Stormwater Operations Manager. I do reside in Keene, and I also attended Keene State College and 3 area high schools, too, if that matters. So my heart's really here with Keene. Anyway, some of the things that I'd like to talk with you tonight are some of the processes and things that I've been working on in the budget stuff. For example, the line painting contract was a good example. We were able to look at that, knowing that we were having problems in the past with getting enough contractors to meet decent prices. We were able to split that contract up into the long lines, which are the center lines and the side lines, and then the handwork portions. And I was able to get bids on those contracts that fell within our money. So that I feel pretty good about that one. We did also start working with the traffic control as police is giving that to us. And we were just recently, as of this last week, actually brought in the retired person from the police department to assist us in learning that program and the facilities that are available. I'm also looking at some street operations for winter ops to see if there's other things we can do to improve our applications. We're looking at establishing some asset maintenance programs for our larger facilities like the parking garages, to get and establish this is what we're supposed to do in the spring and the winter and the fall to keep these things at the maximum operating potential. I think that's all of the things that I wanted to mention on that, and if you have questions about the individual lines, I'd be glad to answer.
I would just add something to what Harry alluded to with regard to a specific instance of the line painting contract, for instance. Over the past couple of years, we've had some issues with the line painting. We haven't not been able to get the line painting done in a timely manner. Some of that had to do with supply chain issues. I think you might recall Texas had a massive storm a couple of years back that disrupted, among other things, the supply of the paint necessary that's required for the streets. So accessing that, and then obviously the issues of the contractors that we use for them to be able to get help. But I would point out that Keene has an extraordinary number of, or amount of line painting in compared to other communities around. Even our last contractor mentioned to us that the amount of work that is required in Keene is similar to communities that are 10 times the size of Keene. So we certainly like our lines and our signs around here. So we've managed to get together to try to figure out how can we get the lines down as early as possible, because we need a certain temperature in order to get the lines down, and then of course the lines will only last so long because of the wear and tear of them. And because as we come out of wintertime, as soon as the warmer weather hits, people start looking for the lines to get painted, as do we. But we're beholden to contractors that just don't have the personnel and or in some cases the material. So we're hoping that by breaking it up in this way, using companies that are a little more specialized in the specific type of application that we're doing, a company that's good at doing the long lines, the center lines, and the fog lines are not necessarily well adapted to do all of the small handwork. So we've broken that contract up, and we'll be able to hopefully we'll be seeing line painting happening here in the very near future. One of the things that we've also been in front of you before about was we have, the Highway Division has 27, 25 cost centers. A couple years ago, we came to you and indicated that we were going to start trying to consolidate some of those cost centers. And we did that. Our first approach to that was some of our open drainage systems, where we combined that into a single line item. And now, using our asset management system, we can pull information out if we want to get specific about what the budget funds were for. It's Harry's and my intention going forward that we're going to try to do the same thing with some of the other cost centers to bring them into more manageable level. As if, for instance, there's a number of line items that have to do with winter maintenance. The reason that we've got it this way is that it was not easy to pull out and answer questions like, well, how much time did you spend plowing sidewalks, without it being done in this way. Using our asset management system, we'll be able to answer those questions, but have all of the funds into one cost center. And if there are specific questions or we need detailed information, we can easily extract that information. And that's something that over the next year or two, Harry and I are hoping to help consolidate that and make the budgeting process a little more user-friendly, but also be able to provide information as necessary when requested.
Yes.
I guess I have two. Well, one's not a question. The last piece sounds great about the ability to actually do some analysis on what the usage is and what we're doing at different times. I think that's awesome. My question, so I grew up in Westmoreland, and I think we don't have any painted lines except for the highways, the state highways. Have we ever looked at, once we get into some of the neighborhoods, just not doing the lines, right, and getting away from that in some of the neighborhoods?
Actually, part of this contract, we looked at a lot of different things like crosswalks, and we actually applied a kind of a diet to those applications, as well as looked at some of the places that kind of stood out that we may not have to do, like center lines and fog lines to the extent there, and we were able to apply. We couldn't go citywide, but we did as much applications we thought, at least initially, to reduce those numbers. And I think for the handwork especially, we were able to do quite a difference, and it showed up when we got the contract bids. And same with the long lines. That's why we're probably in budget.
Yeah, we were actually extremely pleased and not, I guess I would say surprised, that the bids came in within budget, given what we've been experiencing in the last year with contracts we've been issuing. Prices are just crazy right now, but within these two bids that we had, we were able to bring them in budget, and we're very pleased with that. So hopefully we'll get a good product as a result of it, and we'll be obviously doing the quality assurance, quality assistance part of that project as it starts to incur.
Mr. Chairman, commenting about the lines in the neighborhoods, a lot of the lines in the neighborhoods are the result of requests from neighborhoods. So, for example, Eastern Avenue came into you and said that they wanted to have both fog lines and center lines on Eastern Avenue. Payco Maple Acres, about 4 years ago, there was a grant that was obtained to do line painting for people so they can feel safe walking on the sides of the roads and things. So I think part of what you've seen, and as they talk about the number of lines here, a lot of the lines have grown out of, again, neighborhood requests. That's why this particular, I mean, not CESA, but the MSFI committee, when the department deals with those with that committee, sometimes there is a little concern because we're typically are saying this, again, it isn't appropriate, it doesn't meet the various guidelines that are out there. But then again, the neighborhoods, the people who live there ask because they feel safer with those additional lines. So it is a delicate balance between signage and lane markings. As you always hear me say about it, again, signs are great, but 90% of the people who they're complaining about live in that particular area and they drive back and forth every day. But again, when that person is sitting in front of the council committee going, we need this because this will make people change their habits. So as we come through the processes, that's something to keep in mind even as folks approach you about, hey, can you look at going and requesting signs or line painting in the neighborhood because I think it will solve this or that. So yes, they've done a good job. We had to spend a little bit of time figuring out which lines to back off on because again, some of them had been council directed and we were uncomfortable eliminating some of those right off the bat.
Thank you. And I think my position is we should double down on the sidewalk painting because that stuff is important for people to see those. And then, yeah, the fog lines and stuff, it's like where I live, I don't know that we need those. If somebody comes off the road, they're hitting a 4-inch granite curb, so they'll find it. But anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the committee. I just want to diverge just for a second and wear my economic development hat, if you don't mind. I promise I won't go off a cliff too far. The city produced 2 separate economic development plans, and it had a number of different outcomes from those economic development plans, one of which was the creation of the Land Development Code. The other was to move forward with rewriting the master plan, but perhaps one of the most important was consolidating services on the 4th floor. And granted, we're still working on a lot of that consolidation, but something I do want to point out, and that is having the fire department and community development working towards a one-stop shop has been one of my goals and dreams actually for 22 years, and I want to applaud both the community development part and the city manager for making that happen. I can die a happy man. And with that, we'll talk parking. All right. So, it is my favorite DAF. That's correct. All right. With me tonight is Chelsea North, Parking Services Manager. You've heard a lot about parking. We've given a lot of presentations. It's always present on our mind. No matter what subject we talk about, parking seems to come up. Parking system is meant to provide as much opportunity for parking in what is mostly the downtown districts, including core, growth, and limited. And those are the 3 districts where there's no responsibility of the property owner to provide parking on site. It's the city's responsibility basically to provide that parking. Our customers and their needs vary greatly from Main Street businesses to workforce residents and Keene State students. When we talked parking in the past, we pretty much just concentrated on Main Street parking. So we've really diverged quite a bit, and we try to address all of our different markets and all of our different needs. Looking at the proposed budget, you should note it is mostly a flat request. Even so, we can tell you it was difficult to balance expenses and income. Our budget request is for the most part meant to continue the present service level. It's important for the council to know, however, that we have begun implementation of the strategic parking plan, and you'll notice that's one of the goals of the city manager's report for next year is continue to implement that plan. To date, we have completed conversion of the Wells Garage to reserve, investigated options and implemented a new parking management software, installed a pay station in front of City Hall and at the library, plans to install 3 more this fiscal year, in process to add an additional payment application. Updated operational plans, including filling a vacant service officer position, website updates, and increased communication with consumers. It is our goal to continue moving forward with the strategic parking plan. We'll be looking more and more towards steps to take to better accommodate workforce, both our daytime workers and full-time core residents. At some point, we will need to create additional opportunities using aspects of our infrastructure to maximize opportunities, and this will require new programs. And quite frankly, I'm talking housing in that regard. In the next fiscal year, we will convert Lower Main Street from meters to reserved at the request of Keene State College and consistent with the strategic parking plan. Create additional reserved spaces for workforce and/or residents near Gilboa Avenue. Review and, if needed, revise the reserve system at the Elm Street lot. Review and draft an on-street reserve system and/or parking benefits system, of course working very closely with our Public Works Department. Rewrite city code related to parking. Update the strategic parking plan as a living document to reflect accomplishments and future plans. We're in the process of submitting revisions to the meter parking fees and fines to be followed with some changes to code to permit some flexibility as well as change some operating hours. Fees are needed to preserve the operating system as well as maintenance of our downtown, as well as our parking infrastructure. Suggesting changes is consistent with City Council goals to diversify revenue and improve fiscal stability as well as the adopted fiscal policy. And with that, I would take any questions, Mr. Chair. I didn't do a PowerPoint tonight.
I really appreciate the update, and I know this isn't the meeting for it, but I do want to talk about the reserved process because especially the Lower Main Street comment, it makes me a little nervous. So there's definitely some questions I have around how that'll work. But
There's an awful lot of work we need to do. And we'll be back, we'll become very familiar.
thank you.
Can we have Chelsea at least say hello?
Hello. Thank you for your time tonight.
Hi, Duncan Watson again. The Solid Waste Fund, beginning on page 189. Court had alluded to a couple of the things that are present in the Solid Waste Fund right now as an issue, but we have managed to successfully, at least for the time being, put the Solid Waste Fund back in a relatively stable position with a 3-year agreement with our former and current contractor, Waste Management, who transports and disposes of our solid waste from our transfer station. The disposal of solid waste represents the overwhelming majority of the budget from the Solid Waste Division, and the fluctuations of the amount of trash that's being disposed. Trash is always the canary in the coal mine. It's a great indicator of how the economy of the community is doing in a way. If you've got a lot of construction debris coming in, it means that people are feeling pretty good and they're borrowing money and doing home renovations. And we sort of saw a little bit of that during COVID because people were staying home. But now that the COVID pandemic is starting to diminish somewhat, we're starting to see a small uptick of construction and demolition debris. That's reflected in our budget request for some additional funds, not additional funds, but what we expect to be needed for disposal of construction and demolition debris, which in itself is a reasonably good sign for the health and the economy of Keene. But we've got sort of a little bit of a perfect storm developing in New Hampshire with regard to places to dispose of waste. Currently, there are basically 2 major landfills in the state of New Hampshire, one of which is imminently going to close, and that company is trying to site another landfill up in the North Country, but having some issues. But the problem in New Hampshire isn't so much the disposal capacity, but it's more of an issue of waste is coming from outside of New Hampshire and being disposed of in New Hampshire facilities, primarily among them the Turnkey landfill over in Rochester, New Hampshire, which happens to be the one that Keene uses because it's owned and operated by Waste Management of New Hampshire. The state of Massachusetts has basically closed down all landfills in the state of Massachusetts, which has forced a giant market shift. Many communities in Massachusetts are now using New Hampshire as a disposal grounds. In addition to, we're seeing waste that's being transported, tremendous distances because of the increasing prices of the remaining disposal facilities that are located in the Northeast. We're seeing rail and truck transportation going out into the far reaches of New York State, into Ohio. Some of it's being shipped down to Louisiana. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like it in the 30 years that I've been doing this business, and I don't expect that that's necessarily going to change because the Northeast is traditionally very difficult to site landfills because people just don't want them in their communities. It's not really that we lack the land space for them, but there's also legislation going through right now through the state house that is going to put further restrictions on landfill development and make it near impossible to site a landfill in the state of New Hampshire by and large, other than expanding existing facilities that may happen down the road. But we're sort of a very, very small spoke in a much larger wheel, and we don't control much of anything other than how we react to things. So we were fortunate enough that we were able to get a contract extension for 3 years with Waste Management. But I'll tell you now, and I'll tell you for the next couple of years that as we start to wind up this existing contract, it's going to be a different landscape, and we're going to have some very serious discussions about how we react to these kinds of things, because it's going to become an increasingly expensive commodity to dispose of in the future, and there's only so much we can do with regard to increasing recycling and diversion. The vast majority of waste in Keene, 70+% of it, ends up in a landfill. And I don't necessarily see that changing given the infrastructure in Keene and the ability to do anything different than what we're really doing right now. We're sort of stuck where we're at right now. With regard to any other sort of unusual things happening in the solid waste division, we've seen an uptick in the cost of our landfill monitoring. That's primarily due to the PFAS issues you've been probably hearing about. It's a forever chemical that's contained in most consumer products. You're probably actually wearing PFAS right now in some capacity. And the EPA used to have a standard that was 70 parts per trillion of the standard that was detectable limit for which you had to do something about it. And the state of New Hampshire has reduced that to 12 parts per trillion. So as part of our normal landfill monitoring, when we monitor our groundwater management zone, which is an area located mostly to the southeast and south of the existing landfill, we have monitoring wells both for surface water and for groundwater, and we were asked to do some testing beyond our existing groundwater management zone to sort of characterize the extent of PFAS contamination that's going on in the city of Keene. And we did end up with a property that got a hit of PFAS that was above the detectable or the limit that was established by the state of New Hampshire, and required us to do something to provide that home with safe drinking water. The good news is that in further testing, because whenever you get a hit of something, your natural inclination is to sort of see, well, how far is something traveling, and the testing that we have done subsequent to that one hit has revealed no further properties experiencing PFAS contaminations above the limit that's currently established, and we anticipate that would be continuing in the future. So it looks good right now, but future testing may reveal something. But PFAS is something that moves through the groundwater very, very slowly, I think the real questions down the road are going to be this limit that's been established by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. What's the science behind that with regard to picking that number as a health hazard versus, when you're talking 12 parts per trillion, you're talking like a drop of water in a couple of Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's the amount that you're talking about. So it's unbelievably small amount of water that can trigger a fairly big reaction on the city's part, and so far we've been lucky, but some of those increased costs are from the testing that we're doing, and And we are providing one household with a post faucet system to deal with the PFAS so that they have safe drinking water.
So how did you determine that this particular household had a raised PFAS level?
Well, I mean, so we're required to test for a range of things, and the DES added PFAS to the list of things that we have to test. And so when they do the laboratory samples, they send these, there's specialized labs that have the ability to detect very small amounts of chemicals in drinking water, and when the material was sent out to the lab, it was detected above the limit that was established by the state of New Hampshire.
But you're talking about like a city with thousands of people living here, and this is specific to just one house.
Right. Well, so let me clarify. So you're talking about an area that's not served by water distributed by the city of Keene through the water treatment facility. These are private wells. So there's no issue with our water system and PFAS. This is specifically about domestic wells that are by a well at a property that's not served by the municipal water system.
I didn't understand that. Thank you for
My
clarifying
apologies.
it.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for bringing up the topic about landfill capacity and kind of this impending crisis that we may be facing in the future, especially with our contracts currently running out in 3 years. And who knows what other laws are going to be passed in other states, or what restrictions are going to be placed on expanding landfills or developing new landfills in New Hampshire. So I think it's something the council really needs to take a serious look at, because this is an issue that's coming down the line, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very privileged to serve on the New Hampshire Solid Waste Task Force right now. It was a committee that was established through the legislature, and so I've got a great source of information via that participation, and I also, from my experience, have some ideas about how we may be able to have a little bit of softer landing than we otherwise would do if we weren't paying attention.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking through the capital pieces that are upcoming for you. You'd made a comment before about there's not much we can do to limit the 70% that's coming through that's waste. Is there something that we could be investing in that could help with that? Because that could drive long-term ROI depending on what the ability to save it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great question, and yes. So the short answer is that there are likely going to be things. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, there is technology that is available that would dramatically change, the face of how we manage our discards. These types of systems are not necessarily technology that doesn't exist. It's just technology that's put together in a different way. So we have in Keene what's called a materials recovery facility. It's referred to as a MRF. And a materials recovery facility is basically designed to skim off the things that you want, but there's a lot of things that go by you that you don't want. And we just pull out the things that are able to be recycled. But in these newer MRFs coming forward, whereas we do, I think, eight separations in the city of Keene, these new MRFs would be doing 50 to 70 sortations, so that literally the entire waste stream would, in one way or another, be diverted into its highest and best use. And some of that would obviously involve landfilling, but rather than 70% being landfilled, you're looking at 10 to 15% being landfilled. But that's not something that the city of Keene by itself can invest in. I mean, these kinds of technologies, they're very expensive, and they require certain economies of scale. But that's not to say that my hope is that Keene can participate in one of these future centers where we would be supplying material to them, and then that facility would then process that material, and we would end up having a much, much higher recycling rate in Keene. We would probably have no higher cost than what we're experiencing right now, but a much improved diversion rate and better use of our resources.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Aaron Costa, Assistant Public Works Director, Operations Manager of the Treatment Facilities.
Good evening, Christian Tarr, Utilities Maintenance Manager.
And also with us is Mary Lay in the audience, Laboratory Manager. So, first on our agenda is the sewer fund, and would like to start off on page 204. And just quickly go over our mission statement, which is to reduce the community's impact on its natural environment through proper maintenance and operation of the city's collection and treatment infrastructure while maintaining compliance with state and federal regulations and fiscal responsibilities. And I'm going to jump around between page 204 and 205. Our primary responsibilities are to operate and maintain more than 94 miles of gravity sewer and force mains, along with 5 pump stations and the wastewater treatment facility, to maintain reliable operations 24/7, 365. Some of the metrics that we cite in the budget book are million gallons of wastewater transported and treated, number of blockages cleared, percent sewer main flushed compared to the number of scheduled feet, number of grease traps. There's about 115 grease traps throughout the city. Wastewater treatment plant discharge permit violations. As you all know, we have a permit, and as Court mentioned, we got a new one that was issued to us February 1st of 2022 with a whole list of parameters that we have to meet on a regular basis. And sanitary sewer overflows is also something that we keep track of. So to accomplish this, there's 5 divisions through Public Works that work together. The operations, laboratory, utilities maintenance, water and sewer, which is collection and distribution, and engineering all work together to accomplish these tasks. And I would like to go over the accomplishments for fiscal year 22. I think there's some definitely worth highlighting, including the installation of the 1 megawatt solar farm at the wastewater treatment plant. So some of these are either completed or will be completed very soon, and the solar farm should be online and operational within about a month. So it's if you haven't been down to take a look at it, it's definitely a sight to see. Completion of the aeration pipe replacement project, construction of the screening equipment at Martel Court Pump Station. There was a nice article about a month ago in the Sentinel, kind of featured that issue of non-flushable materials. The city's investing about $1.3 million in infrastructure to remove that non-flushable material, so it protects our pumps and infrastructure at the wastewater treatment facility. We continued our video inspection and cleaning sections of the sewer mains. We're completing our laboratory renovation as we speak, probably be finishing up in the next month or two. We replaced 8 original sluice gates at the wastewater treatment plant, which are just gates that divert liquid into various tanks. Continuing to do our manhole inspections and sewer main flushing and camera inspections. And we worked with the Keene State College doing COVID-19 sampling. It was a great partnership. The data was used, and that program has come to an end, but that was a big accomplishment, a lot of work that we did in fiscal year 22. Upcoming projects that we have for this coming fiscal year include the installation and replacement of original emergency generators at both Martel Court and the wastewater treatment plant, as well as a transformer. All of that equipment's been in service since 1985. The sludge dryer feasibility assessment, which Duncan just really hit on why we're doing that project, is to reduce the amount of biosolids that we send to the turnkey landfill in Rochester. Typically, our biosolids are about 30% solids, but with a dryer, we could get those up to about 95 to 98% dry, and therefore we'd be paying a lot less to have that water trucked off. We're going ahead and replacing 6 original wastewater sludge pumps. as well as replacing the original roof at the wastewater treatment plant. So some of the upcoming challenges have already been hit on, so I won't spend a lot of time, but just increased costs across the board. Whether it's lab supplies, electricity, heating fuel, chemicals, and just getting replacement parts and getting them in a timely fashion has been some challenges. Revenues on page 209 are basically reflective of the rate structure that we have. We are seeing a slight increase this year in our septic waste, which is waste that's hauled to the wastewater plant by independent septic haulers. So we're seeing about a $30,000 increase for this coming fiscal year. And with that, I'd like to touch on the supplementals, which are on page 210. So because of the screening equipment that we're installing at Martel Court, it required a building addition. So the first line item there is propane for new building addition at Martel Court. That's just propane to heat that new building addition space. $34,000 for increased contractual tonnage for our biosolids. So we have a 5-year agreement with Waste Management. The first year was $121 a ton, and it goes up incrementally each year. So our next year is going to be $125 a ton. Annual lease payment of 3 acres for the solar farm. So in the wastewater plant budget 08006, you'll see a land rental line item, and that's for the property that the wastewater treatment plant rents from the airport along with the access road. We will have to pay a lease agreement. You know, it'll be an addition for this additional 3 acres that the solar field is on. And just a price increase for the cost of chemicals. Our chemicals are out to bid right now, but I'm expecting anywhere between a 15 to 25% increase in chemicals. And so with that, I'm happy to go through any of the detailed account line items, but it's level funded with the exception of those supplementals that I called out.
Questions, members of the committee? Good.
All right. Go ahead and jump over to water. Yep, page 220 and 221 is what I'll be hitting on first. And again, I just want to state our mission statement, which is provide reliable and good quality drinking water that consistently meets consumer expectations and state and federal standards in sufficient quantities and pressure for fire protection and commercial and domestic use through effective and efficient maintenance, repair, and operation of the water infrastructure. And again, our primary responsibilities are to maintain and ensure 24/7, 365 operation of water main, valves, hydrants. We have 2 surface water dams, 4 ground water wells, 102 miles of water main, 6 water booster stations, 6 water storage tanks, and the water treatment facility. And some of the metrics that we again track are millions of gallons of water produced, the number of breaks and service leaks and repairs, hydrants exercised, meters changed out, percent of non-metered water, and number of water quality and discolored water incidents. And again, those same 5 divisions that I spoke about earlier work together on the water side of the house as well to accomplish all of these tasks. We had a very successful fiscal year 22 where we were able to complete a number of projects such as the Drummer Hill Pump Station. Anyone who's been up Timber Lane Drive will see that new building on the right side as you're going up the hill. That replaced an underground pumping pit, so we brought everything above ground, put in new pumps, new electrical, emergency generator. So it's working very nicely, and we're very happy and proud of that. Design improvements for the 1.5 million gallon storage tank, which is located at the water treatment facility. It's almost 100 years old, and it's going to get a new top. So it's an underground storage tank, and to protect it, we're going to do some modifications to the roof. Completed the Woodward Dam reconstruction project. We're in the process of completing the water supply master plan and well evaluation. We upgraded some chemical feed equipment at the water treatment facility and one of the corrosion control facilities. We installed 200 feet of security fencing at Babbage Reservoir through the local source water protection grant from DES, and of course distribution system flushing. We've got a busy schedule for fiscal year 23 with those construction improvements as I described to the 1.5 million gallon storage tank. We plan on refurbishing the interior and exterior of Chapman Road tank, which is a concrete precast tank that was built in 1993. Complete electrical upgrades at Chapman Road and Blackbrook water tanks. Again, those are underground pits where we house some equipment. We plan on building above ground stations just to protect equipment and prevent employees from having to do confined space entries to work on it. Begin design and complete construction of a 3 million gallon tank renovation project. Everyone knows what that piece of infrastructure is. It hasn't been coated in over 20 years, so we're in the process right now of going to be doing the design and getting a consultant on board to help us with that project. And then complete pavement replacement project at the water treatment facility. So again, if we look at the revenues on page 225, it's just a reflection of our current rate structure, and Court had already talked a little bit about that structure. Jumping over to page 226, supplementals. Every 3 to 5 years, it's required by the state of New Hampshire to clean our 6 water storage tanks. Typically, we've hired a company that has a scuba diver come in, and he does an interior, or they do an interior inspection of the tank while they're in there, and they do some cleaning as well. So this is a every 3 to 5 year project that we have to do, and we're budgeting $20,000 for that. And then because we have the new above ground Drummer Hill pump station, this is to provide fuel for that space. And again, we can go line item by line item if you wish, but it's pretty much a flat budget, minus those supplementals that I talked about.
Questions from members of the committee? Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was easy.
Mr. Mountford. Jim, I promise you next year we're going to make you number 1 instead of being the last.
I'm okay with it. I actually like listening to everybody else's stuff. It keeps me up to date on what's going on in places I don't normally get to see, except for their broke down stuff. Yeah, exactly. Good evening, councilors. My name is Jim Mountford. I'm the Fleet Operations Manager for the City of Keene. Duncan Watson. He's been here a few times already. I'll recap on our left-hand page. Fleet Services provides 365-day-a-year, 24-hour coverage for the fleet. That's included everything that's the fire department, the PD, the airport, Parks and Rec, the highway division. And that's done with 4 mechanics, 1 admin coordinator who's he's a service writer and a parts man. He takes care of the inventory for what we have at Fleet for parts, tires, hard parts, lights, etc. Everything that we need to keep stuff rolling. And then myself, who oversees the operation. We also buy and sell all of the equipment for the city of Keene except for the fire trucks. That's a little bit of a different program. We also take care of 4 fuel farms. One is at Public Works, one is at the transfer station, one at the airport, and one, not the main fuel farm at the airport, but the one that supplies the equipment for the airport, and the other one's at the Parks and Rec division. Out of all the vehicles for the city of Keene, we have 159 vehicles that are in the rental fleet. Fleet keeps records on all of these vehicles through the computerized fleet analysis program. We track all the services, all the parts, all the labor, all the fuel that goes into these vehicles. And coming up, we've finally figured out how to use taking pictures of what the vehicles looked like when we got them to what they look like when we get rid of them, body work that's happened over the course of time. This also helps us evaluate how long we can keep the vehicle. Sometimes we're able to keep the vehicle for a few more years. so we can get some more life out of it, which actually keeps the cost down on the replacement end in the budget. All the complete amount of vehicles that we work on, including pieces of apparatus, i.e. mowers that go on tractors, snow blowers, plows, to that effect, is 266 vehicles, all done by 6 individuals. Between July and the end of September, every one of those vehicles will go through the fleet. We also provide New Hampshire State inspection for all the vehicles that are in the fleet. There's 5 of us that are licensed to do New Hampshire State inspections. 3 of us are certified for underground storage containment, which is the fuel farms. So that's another process we do every 2 years. We go to we test through the state, days worth of training and testing to that effect too. Some of the things going down the road, our labor rates for the shop are right in between the light duty fleets that are out there, like say Warriors or Fairfields, and then we're still a little bit cheaper than the heavy truck fleets, i.e. Freightliner, Mack, Peterbilt, to those effects. So we're right in the middle, which is pretty good considering that we work on everything basically from snow blowers to the giant snow blower that you see at the airport, or the brooms, the loaders, stuff that you see at the transfer station, all the stuff you see there, all that equipment. Some of our costs that are coming up this year, as everybody else has stated as well, our fuel costs, we've seen an average of about $7,000 more a month since the middle of winter. So far we're above water with that. We're doing fairly well. We did ask for an increase in our fuel budget for this coming year, as we obviously will expect some problems with the inflation. Same thing with our parts. We requested a little bit more money for our parts line item as well. Everything in that line item is a derivative, a product of oil. The plastic, steel, those are all the items that we'll use. Rubber, for instance. We have seen some issues with tires. We were fortunate enough to stock heavy on tires for our 1-ton trucks. So this coming winter, we actually got those through a pretty good program, which we buy everything from the government program anyways when it comes to that sort of stuff. So we'll be doing okay coming into this situation, so we should be fine for this coming year. Fuel is the only real question here, is how we're going to deal with the fuel prices at what they are. One of the nice things that we have is that we run B20, which is 20% biofuel, and the other 80% is straight diesel fuel. Through the bidding process, it allows us to buy it for way cheaper than we do out at the street. We're still only paying for our B20 under $3 a gallon, which is the contracted price. So hopefully, we got to redo our contract again coming up here in another month or so. So hopefully we can keep that in that area, so that we will stay above water with the fuel prices. As I alluded before, when it comes to the electric vehicle stuff, that's a pretty heavy topic around the country these days. One of our priorities is not only do we talk to every division it's not like I just go, okay, here's your car and that's the end of it. Every division that gets a vehicle from the Fleet Services Division, it's a long process. Some of this stuff is actually weeks to months on what we're going to give that division for a piece of equipment. Make sure that it's not overkill and it's not underkill and it gets ruined. But it also comes down to the fact, in the last few years, where can we use an electric car? Some of that's going to require where we're going to put the infrastructure for these electric vehicles. And also, is it advantageous? Some of our cars that are out there in these other divisions, they may not see a pile of miles over the course of 10 years. So we want to make sure that we're not spending way above what we actually need. So it has to be inside of the circle that where it's going to be affordable for the city of Keene and actually useful for the city of Keene. As much as we'd like to give everything we can and provide everything we can, sometimes it's not a matter of, oh, let's just do this because we want to do this. It's got to be feasible for what we're doing with the fleet. As far as line items go, most everything in our line items is pretty straight across the board from the last few years. Like I did say, that our increases you'll see in parts and you'll see in the fuel line items. I think it comes out to roughly about $80,000 difference in last year.
I would also just mention that fleet is definitely one of the primary effects of our supply chain issues that we've been seeing. We've had lead times of many more months than we're used to when we procure a vehicle. It takes, in some cases, we've been still waiting on delivery of vehicles that we ordered 6-8 months ago. And so while we're waiting for the new vehicle to come in, it might mean that the vehicle that we're replacing might be in service a little bit longer, requires a little bit more for parts to keep it on the road until the new vehicle can get delivered. And there's, because of our small purchasing power, we don't really have any ability to move to the front of the line. So we're beholden to global issues, and we see them right here in Keene.
Yeah, I have a couple examples of that. I just checked on yesterday, as a matter of fact. Not yesterday, but Friday, as a matter of fact. And on a couple of we ordered 3 trucks back in the beginning of July of 21. One of those trucks has showed up on the lot from where we buy some of our vehicles from, which is MHQ down in Marlborough, Massachusetts. Those are all bought through GSA contract or Greater Boston Police Council. One of those trucks is here. One truck, they have no idea when it's coming, and that's our new Wrecker, which our Wrecker's a 1998, so we're kind of excited to see a new truck, but we don't know when we're going to get it, so that's kind of an issue. It is coming eventually. And our new vac truck for the highway division, the vac truck we ordered right off the bat as soon as the budget opened in July of last year. That truck, we have been told we may not even see that truck still until October of this coming year. So it is kind of a problem because our old vac truck is, it's a 2003, it's done its time, we put it in emergency mode only, so, it's heavily rusted. It's not, investment-wise, it's not worth trying to rebuild it. And when we started this process back last fall, we actually tried to get a whole new module, which would have been everything from behind the cab of the truck, new to put on that truck. And because the vehicle is so old, when I called Florida at VACCON, they're like, yeah, we can't do that. Just because, there's no adaptability between a truck that's 20 years old to what they have to put on the stuff these days. Things have changed so drastically over the years.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a dollar amount for the total inventory of parts at any given time? How much we actually carry in parts?
We do parts inventory every year in the spring that has to be submitted to the finance division, and we've been doing that for the almost 20 years that I've been here.
Do you know
the dollar amount that we normally keep is around $250,000 in stock?
So a little, probably like 7 or 8 months of inventory on hand at any given time?
Well, here's the other thing. Our inventory revolves throughout the course of the year. So every day, we probably process at least 200 invoices a week from various parts stores in the area and from other suppliers outside of the area, i.e. John Deere, Case, Volvo, any of those places. So not only what we have in stock, but we also have rotation inventory that's coming in, installed on the vehicles, going out to the street. So basically there's a couple of things going on with us. Not only are we a little bit of a parts warehouse, but we're also much like a parts store. Items come in, they go in inventory, they get sold off to the vehicle, and then it's that whole cycle all over again. What we keep in stock, because the fleet's so diverse, and the dollar amount is the way it is because we don't have all Fords, we don't have all Internationals, the payloaders are different brands. Some of that is because when you buy them, they become, because of the bid process, you can't stick with the same brand every time you go to replace something. So obviously we try to buy the best that we can through the bid process that we're allotted. But when you stock parts, like we have a Hitachi payloader, we have an SDLG payloader, we have a John Deere payloader. So what that does is that the parts that you have in stock don't fit just one item. They fit, they do fit just one item. They don't fit multiple items. Some stuff we have, like the interceptors for the PD, we carry no less than 40 tires in-house at any given time. Because the amount of miles that those cars put on, we may be putting tires on every 3 weeks on a car. So that rotation's always like that. And then you get damage, curb damage, things like that come along with the business. A lot of the other stuff, the chemicals that we keep in stock, we always have, or try to have, 150 gallons of motor oil because the service is on a dump truck, 40 quarts of oil per truck, just like the payloaders. So you have to keep that much stock in-house. Same deal with antifreezes, and unfortunately the way the industry is these days, we carry 7 different coolants for the fleet. That's because this dealer, this manufacturer uses this one uses this one uses that. So there's organic and there's non-organic antifreezes. It gets into a big hullabaloo sometimes. And then certain pieces of equipment use different types of oil. So our Toyota RAV4s that we have throughout various parts of the city, those use a 0.20 weight motor oil. Our dump trucks use 1540. Some of the other cars use 520. So when you're keeping all that stuff in there, which is part of the inventory, not every tire is the same size, obviously, so we always keep no less than 2 spares per vehicle. As in, like an instance tonight, you can look outside and you see the storm that came through here. Whatever division's out there in the street doing work, there is a probability of blowing a tire. Happens all the time. So if we don't have that stuff there, we can't provide the service that we're supposed to be providing. So hence why we carry so much inventory. And honestly, we could carry a lot more if we had the space. We just don't.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
again, committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I'm going to just express, I think as hopefully you saw, really none of us, we're all connected in the department. Finance supports us, purchasing. It's across the board. So no one department can do what it does without the other department. So hopefully the committee sees that when we do our budgets. And again, thank you very much.
All right, so the next step in the process is a public hearing this Thursday. So we'll hear from the public. Not this one? All right, okay. All right, so a couple weeks away. And with all the number of people who have showed up for this part, I suspect there won't be many that come. Oh, okay. Say nice words. When we meet next, then we will have had an opportunity to talk a little bit about what we've heard so far. If any of you have some more information you're looking for, feel free to contact the department or the manager's office or the finance department. If you didn't see it in the book, but there's a lot of information in the book. And then I'm sure we'll hear from the council on the last night when it's time, or maybe adding some more money or making some changes. But we've got a good budget here. We're doing the best job we can with the amount of money that's available, and we keep on moving forward. Thank you. Thanks to the staff. Very good job. So we're adjourned.